Ever since the very beginning of the series, boss fights have been an integral part of the Mario games. I mean, without a fight against Bowser, can it really even be called a Mario game? Shut up. With each new release, people look forward to seeing what creative ideas they come up with for these fights. But in terms of 2D, they're often disappointing. Luckily though, the 3D games usually have a much better track record than their 2D counterparts. Not only is there just more space to move around, but they're also more creative on average. Except for Bob-omb, I guess. Now, I've already made a video a while back ranking the boss fights in the most recent title, Super Mario Odyssey, so I thought it would be fun to take a look back and see where the 3D boss fights got their start. So today, we're going to be ranking every boss fight in Super Mario 64. But how are we going to be judging these? The main factors will be creativity, fun, and difficulty. So the fight that I think excels in all three of those will be the best. Now there's also the question of what exactly counts as a boss fight. There are 7 pretty obvious ones, but I still decided to be very inclusive for this video and include any enemy fight that rewards you with a star in the end. So that gives us 15 total boss fights to talk about today, even if the first few in the list are a bit wacky. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. Alright, so what do I think the absolute worst boss is in Mario 64? Well, to be honest, it was pretty much a tie between 3 different entries. That's because all of these fights are basically the exact same. I guess they never learned from 2D Mario after all. Those 3 fights are the Big Bully in Lethal Lava Land, the other Big Bully in Lethal Lava Land, and the Big Bully from Snowman's Land. But this one's a bit chilly. So yeah, each of these are basically the exact same character, and they also have pretty much the exact same way you have to defeat them. Instead of being based on how many hits you do on the bully, you kill them by pushing them into the lava nearby. Or the ice water, whatever. Now I actually think this is a pretty fun idea for a fight. Mario 64 expanded Mario's moveset greatly from the 2D title, so you have a lot of options on how you can push the bully off the platform. Generally, I prefer going with the classic ground pound, but you also have the option of punching and kicking them off too. But while you're doing this, you have to be very careful because the bully too is able to push Mario around by ramming into him. While the bullies won't deal damage, the lava they push you into certainly will. So I think this is honestly a pretty cool dynamic, but it's just used way too often. We will see other bosses that repeat fights later, but I think the bullies here probably got it the worst. But what about their order in the ranking? Well, if I were to choose, despite it being the most unique, I think my least favorite will be 15, the Ice Bully. I do appreciate the unique look and setting, but that's also part of its downfall. The floor under the Ice Bully is also ice, which you may think would make the boss harder because of the slippery physics. But instead, you could just do this. In my opinion, that makes the Ice Bully the easiest fight in the game. As for the other 2, my order goes 14, the Big Bully from Boil the Big Bully, and 13, the Big Bully from Bully the Bullies. They are basically the exact same, but the second one requires you to defeat 3 smaller bullies beforehand, so it technically has more content. Okay, we are finally free from the bullies and can talk about a different boss. Now this next one is interesting because I don't really think most people would count it. I watched an all boss fights in Mario 64 video and this wasn't in it, so one of us is a liar, choose wisely. But the boss is 12, the Big Fire Piranha Plants. The first star in Tiny Huge Island is called Pluck the Piranha Flower, so to get it, you have to find piranha plants and swiftly murder them. I suggest starting the level in the small state so it's easier to jump over to the platform, which is pretty close to the start. Now you'll see a few small piranha plants on this platform, but they won't reward you with the star. Instead, you're going to have to go into the big version of the island to fight them there. As soon as you exit the pipe, you'll notice that a giant piranha plant just grows up out of the ground. However, there's not just one, but actually 5 that all spawn around the platform to shoot fire at you. It's very easy to get hit here by accident, but luckily, it's not too hard to defeat each of the plants. You just have to hit each of them once and they'll go down, which I think is fairly fun to do. Also note that for some reason you can't jump high on this grass. Now of the fights we'll see today, this definitely has the least unique method of murder, but at least it's the only piranha plant fight, so I found it to be a bit more fun than the bully trio. But speaking of trios, I think we should get our second one out of the way here, and this time, it's gonna get a little spooky. These are all 3 giant boos found in the level Big Boo's Haunt. Pretty fitting place for a big boo, I'd say. Just like in the 2D games, boos will stay still when you look at them and move when you aren't. However, unlike the 2D games, whenever you're looking at them, the boo will become completely intangible, meaning you can't hit them. In order to kill the big boos, you have to hit them 3 times, whether it be a ground pound, punch, kick, or slide kick. In all honesty, this is pretty easy to do, but the reason I like this fight is because it's fun to try and combo the boos as fast as possible. But what about each of their individual placings? Well, to be honest, they are all pretty much exactly the same, so it's super close. The worst of the bunch will be 11, the Big Boo from Go on a Ghost Hunt. This fight has the most open arena of the bunch, definitely making it the easiest. I do like how you have to spawn the boo by killing all the other boos in the mansion. That's a pretty good introduction to the course. Next up is 10, the Big Boo from Ride Big Boo's Merry-Go-Round. Instead of being found in the mansion, this guy's found below it in the merry-go-round. Much like the last one, you have to kill several boos beforehand, but I like how this fight did it more. The merry-go-round is a really neat setting, and the boos appearing from the painting is a great touch. The spinning floor can also make it a bit harder to hit the boos. But my favorite of the bunch is 9, the Big Boo from Big Boo's Balcony. This time no boo murder is required to spawn him, instead you've just got to reach the roof of the mansion. All things considered, this is not too hard, but him being up here does provide for the most difficult arena of the group. The balcony is very small and easy to fall off of, making this probably the most challenging fight. I also think it's funny how the star is evil and goes up onto the roof after the fight, which by itself can be hard to reach. Now we aren't done with Big Boo's haunt just yet because there's actually another boss hidden within its walls. This time though, it's not a ghost, but instead the big floating eyeball from the one episode of Regular Show. 8. Big Mr. Eye. Before going back upwards towards the balcony, if you grab a vanish cap and then run up there real fast, you'll be able to get behind this painting. Already that's kind of a fun challenge, but of course it doesn't end there, as you also have to defeat Mr. Eye, who's hiding inside this new room. To do that, all you have to do is run around him in a circle, which to be honest is incredibly easy. If you're going purely based on difficulty, this guy should definitely be lower on the list, but I'll be honest, I think the giant floating eyeball is just really funny. Alright, but now it's time for what you all have probably been waiting for. Up until this point, these were only kinda boss fights, especially since they were all just big versions of non-boss enemies. But for our top 7 here, we've got all the fights that are undeniably boss fights. So my least favorite of the bunch is 7, the Wiggler. Of this group, I think he's easily the most forgettable. He's found on Tiny Huge Island and there's a good amount of puzzle solving required to reach him. You first have to drain the water at the top of the island while in the tiny version, and then climb back up to enter inside the big version. Once you get inside, you hear the voice of the Wiggler, who's understandably mad because you just flooded his home. No, maybe MatPat had a point. Anyway, once the boss battle music begins, you have to hop down onto the chain fence below you to jump on the Wiggler's head. You've got to do this 3 times with the Wiggler getting faster and faster with each hit. He even jumps after the second one. Overall though, this isn't too difficult, making him fairly easy compared to the rest of these 7 bosses. That's fine though, because he already had a good challenge required to reach him in the form of the water puzzle. Once you defeat the Wiggler, he'll shrink back down and fall through the fence, rewarding us with a star. I think this was a great way to adapt a classic 2D enemy into 3D and was overall an enjoyable fight. I do think it could have been cool if he turned red on the last phase, but they fixed that on the DS version. Oh, also yes, one day I plan on making several Mario 64 DS videos, I just need to get a good way to record footage of it first. 6. King Whomp. Now we've got one of the most iconic bosses from Mario 64. Being the main star of the game's second level, Whomp's Fortress, makes it so a lot of people will likely see him on their playthrough. Now King Whomp is also notably our final big version of a standard enemy we'll be seeing on this list. Technically King Bob-omb is named Big Bob-omb, but he is very clearly different. So for King Whomp, you simply need to reach the very top of Whomp's Fortress to find him. Then he'll start yapping about some social commentary and yeah, who cares, let's kill him. Just like a standard Whomp, he'll jump up into the air and slam his face back down to the ground to crush the player. This is already a gimmick I really enjoy with the standard Whomps, and it's just made even better with King Whomp's bigger area. In order to defeat him, you'll have to ground pound on his back 3 times, which means you have to rush up onto his back between attacks. I think that's a great idea for a fight, and it's really fun to do. But King Whomp is unfortunately the easiest fight to cheese in the entire game. See, for whatever reason, when Mario is starting his ground pound, he'll become completely intangible to the Whomps falling. So instead of having to run around, all you have to do is start a ground pound as King Whomp is falling, and you'll go straight through him. Yeah, that's a pretty big thing to miss, but luckily for King Whomp, I still find this cheese to be fun. So overall, it didn't lose him too much credit, but yeah, it probably shouldn't have existed. 5. King Bob-omb. And here we have the most iconic Mario 64 boss beside Bowser himself. King Bob-omb is not only the first boss you fight, but also the focus of the game's very first star. I think King Bob-omb acts as a perfect introduction to the game. Not only do you have to go through the entire battlefield and mountain to reach him, but his fight also does a great job setting up what you have to do for Bowser. Once you reach the top, the flat peak of the mountain acts as your battlefield. Your goal here is to try and get behind King Bob-omb and then throw him onto the grass to deal damage. But don't throw him off the cliff, that's cheating. Now, all things considered, this is probably the safest fight of the bunch. Even if King Bob-omb picks you up, he won't deal damage unless he throws you off, where you can then easily heal yourself with a nearby heart. So really, this fight is all about trial and error, trying to run behind him and throw him 3 times. I honestly do have quite a fun time with this though, especially jumping straight over King Bob-omb's head and grabbing him that way. And also, King Bob-omb easily has my favorite design of any boss character in this game, which makes me really happy that he keeps returning in spin-off games. And the movie where he just dies. But since he is so easy, I don't think I can move him up too much higher, but he's still a perfect intro for the game. 4. Bowser 1. And now it's time we begin our final trilogy of bosses, of course being the main man himself, Bowser. Being the main villain of the game, it's expected that he'd show up at least a few times, and luckily I think all of his fights are really cool. I would say he's got easily the most unique method of defeat of the bunch. Just like King Bob-omb, you have to grab him from behind, but this time you hold onto his tail. Now instead of just dropping him like you did before, you actually have to swing him around and throw him into one of the bombs dotted around the arena. This can actually be quite challenging to time because Mario's swinging speed is very fast. It's for that reason that the first 2 fights only require you to hit Bowser with 1 bomb, but even then, that makes him probably the most challenging fight we've seen so far. It can be kind of difficult to grab onto his tail without running into him, and Bowser can also spit out fire to make it more scary. Now luckily, there is a tiny bit of cheese you can do. If you want, you could just drop Bowser slowly towards the bombs at the edge. Since he takes a second to get up, you could chain a few grabs together and not have to worry about timing the throw. I do think that makes this fight lose a few points as it makes it significantly easier without the timing aspect, but overall, this is still a fantastic first Bowser. 3. Bowser 2. This is very similar to the last fight, but takes place in Bowser in the Fire Sea, and he's got a few more attacks. When the fight starts, he'll now completely tilt the arena, which can easily put the player into lava. And for some reason, Bowser can teleport now.
Like an Enderman.
That all does make this an improvement over the first, but only by a little bit. Also, if you want a more in-depth look at the Bowser levels as a whole, I got a video on that. Watch it now. But as for a runner-up, we're actually going to take a break from King Koopa so we can meet Eyerock. This boss is found within the pyramid in Shifting Sandland and has always been one of my favorites for a large number of reasons. For starters, getting to him is pretty fun. You can either try to jump into the entrance or ride an elevator down into it, which you unlock by standing on the 4 pillars outside the pyramid. That puts us into this really cool underground tomb. At first it may seem like there's nothing, but if you jump onto this pile of bricks, they'll suddenly spring to life to reveal Eyerock. I absolutely love this guy's design, being a pair of floating hands with an eye on the inside, which is super unique from any other boss in the series up until this point. Not only does the eye on the palm just look really neat, but it also has a purpose as it's Eyerock's weak spot. You have to hit each hand in the eye 3 times, making him require 6 hits in total. Eyerock doesn't keep its eye open for very long, and even when it does, the other hand is likely doing an attack to either hurt or push Mario off the arena. That leads to a super interesting fight as you try and punch at just the right time while avoiding both of their attacks. I'd say of the bunch, this is probably the second hardest boss fight in the game, so combine that with the fantastic aesthetic and it absolutely deserves to place here on the list. But of course, we all know what number 1 had to be. Bowser 3, or as I like to call him, Rainbow Bowser. This is a significantly expanded version of his original fight, which makes it so much harder. In fact, this might just be my choice for the hardest boss fight in the Mario series. Now, instead of having to hit 1 bomb, you have to hit 3. However, if you thought you could just slowly drop him like you did before, you are sorely mistaken. After getting hit twice, Bowser will cause the arena to fall apart into a star shape. Not only is that just cool to look at, but it also makes the bombs too far away from the arena to just drop Bowser into them. Now you have to time your throws to defeat him. This is absolutely terrifying to do, as each missed throw gives Bowser a chance to attack, and his attacks are far more deadly this time around too, whether it be shockwaves or fire rain that fills the entire arena. And on top of this fight just being extremely difficult, the aesthetic here is phenomenal. He gets his own unique final boss theme which fits perfectly with the dark and green atmosphere. I think they absolutely nailed this final showdown against Bowser, and I can't think of a better way they could have ended the game. So for that, Bowser 3 is easily my choice for the best boss in Mario 64. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you think Klepto is a boss and hate me for not including him? Let me know in the comments. I know this was a very short ranking, but I hope you all enjoyed it regardless. I've just started another college semester, so I've got a lot on my plate with it, weekly videos, and the 200k special. Which, by the way, I've edited over 5 hours on by this point, so I'm getting really close to finishing. But anyways, Doraemon's for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.